fair?
Yeah. You ready? You okay with that?
Yes, I am okay with that.
Good. So first, my first question, actually, I didn't mention because I wanted to ask you on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
What are 3 words that come to mind that truly represent you outside of your?
Okay, excellent. So I will introduce myself and then I'll get to those 3 questions and that'll help me think of them. I may find those words as I'm introducing myself. So I am Jeannette Washington, and I've worked as both a speech pathologist as well as a software engineer. My specialty is dyslexia. I do not have dyslexia, and I don't consider myself an expert in dyslexia. What I will say is I've had a large caseload of students who fell into that dyslexia category, and that really helped me to, or ignited my flame as it relates to finding research, looking into ways that I can help, gathering new certifications so that I can put myself in a better place of assisting those dyslexic learners. And it's all around that premise of language-based learning disorders.
Yeah.
So I have definitely had my share of students that I've worked with who fell into that category and under that umbrella. And so I had to make haste in finding ways to support them.
Yeah.
So my current work evolves around technology. And at this stage, I am creating accessible ways for dyslexic and other learners to navigate and maneuver on the web and get that same experience as those who are not. They're typical developing peers.
Yeah.
So when I think of 3 words that resonate with me and that help kind of shape the work that I will do, I will say leadership, amplification, and innovation. Okay, leadership, because when you are taking on this type of work, you need to make sure that you're ready to lead, you're able to lead. Amplification, simply because you don't want to replace anyone's voice, you just want to amplify their voice so that they can really start to make themselves heard. And then innovation, because you have to find new ways to maneuver this space and to navigate through this space. So those are my 3 words.
Love that. Love that. And I guess that moves us right into my next question, which would be, what led you to do this work? And I think you already touched on it a little bit, but I guess I'm wondering if there's anything else in your life or any other motivator or any other experience particularly that comes to mind that led you to the work you do now. Because as you said, you did do speech pathology and you kind of moved into this tech and industry or tech work, supporting still learners with dyslexia, right? And so I think I'm curious if there is anything else, I guess, that sort of led you to the work that you do now.
So I will say, as a speech pathologist, I've always found myself like rooting and cheering for the underdogs, for those who have stories that are not very, let's see, relevant to others, and really helping propel them to a space where they can tell their story. Yeah. So I think that was truly a defining characteristic in helping me to do this work. As a Black woman, I find that we are often the agitators and the ones who are really trying to uplift other parts of society, because we know what it's like to not be heard, not be seen, and to be told that, hey, your voice is not really relevant right now. So I think what you'll find in a lot of African American women or women of African descent, or even people of color, let's look at it in a broader spectrum. We have always been marginalized. So when we get the opportunity to help other groups of people to get to a place where they are able to visibly share and tell their stories, I think we gravitate towards that.
Absolutely. I can relate to that feeling of using your space for something good, and not just good, but something that amplifies other voices. That's really wonderful. I love that. And I know you also mentioned your students, right? When you were working with some students, and I think that, I mean, I don't know, just being an educator myself, thinking about how motivating my students are in a lot of ways, right? In terms of the work that we do. And I'm sure you felt similarly with them and led you into some of the work you do now.
Yes, absolutely. I've had some gems. All of my students are so memorable, and their stories were so just vividly colored. And I definitely miss my kiddos. And I know that my time with them, whether we were working on articulation or working to understand different components of comprehension, I think that my time with them was pretty valuable. And it helped me to realize, like, I love serving students, especially those who are placed in a position where they're almost underserved. So yes, that I'll say 50-50 as it relates to what kind of helped me to develop into, this advocating person, or this person who was striving to make sure that the table has all of us sitting at it. That has a lot to do with it.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And I think, with my next question, thinking about your intersectional work, and this is something that that these are your words, and so I guess I want you to maybe speak more on that intersectionality of tech, accessibility, and social justice, and sort of what that means to you. I love everything that you've said already, and I think it's always important to remember, when I read those words from you, it was a good reminder of the intersectionalities within all of our work, right? And our identities too. And so I think mentioning that was very important, and I just wanted to hear more from you what that meant to you.
Yeah, so the term intersectionality first became popular with a professor, Kimberly Crenshaw. And I think it is so important to consider all of the ways that we intersect in society, whether it is our religion, whether it is our ethnicity, our gender norms, whether it is our our upbringing and our standing as it relates to money, class, and so many different ways that we all intersect in this world. So I believe that technology and accessibility and dyslexia intersects at different points, because when you are creating these tech tools, or when you are using these different tech products, you have to be mindful of your audience. And your audience may include, and I'm almost certain it's going to include, if you look at the statistics about how many people that live in the entire world who has disabilities, dyslexia, autism, ADHD, cerebral palsy, and so on and so forth, Down syndrome, you see that a lot of these disabilities are present among these tools that we're using. So for instance, think about, a website that you've developed, and you've worked really hard on making this concise message come forth through the website. And so it's important that you consider who else is going to be using that website, and again, we talk about those with different abilities or disabilities, and it's likely that they're going to be using that website. So you want to be mindful of, the terminology you're using. You want to be mindful of how your colors are contrasting for those who have, like blindness or low vision. You want to consider whether there is a lot of music and sound and stimulation happening, because that could affect those who are hard of hearing. So it's just a lot to consider when you are creating those products or using those products. I even think about being a teacher, and you're using Zoom, and you have maybe a student or two who has low hearing or they're deaf. What are you doing to make sure that they can still access that information that you're presenting on Zoom? So it's just about seeing outside of yourself as you're creating or using these tech tools and products. So that's kind of how they intersect. I even think about those with dyslexia who have a hard time with maybe reading or comprehending things that are in front of them. So you want to make sure that it is audible, or that there is some type of an extension that provides them with, a way that they can hear the content.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just being mindful of other people who are, using your software and using the tools that you are presenting to them.
Love that. Very good reminders. Definitely. And I guess leading into you are very passionate about this work, and obviously a wonderful advocate. And so you wrote a book. And I want to know more about that too. And I want to know about the content of the book, obviously, but also I wanted to ask you maybe about the starting of writing that book, what that was like. I didn't really mention that in the question initially, but I think that's an important thing to note too, and to ask you about, the starting of writing that book. What was that like? And then maybe going into, what do you talk about in that book? And I have some quotes here from your book, but I'll let you speak on it first. And then if I have more questions, I'll ask you.
Sounds good. So we'll talk about the process. So I've spent a lot of time overseas and within the contiguous US, speaking at tech events, talking about ways that we can create accessible tech for people with disabilities, mainly those with dyslexia, because again, that's one of my specialties that I've been researching for about 10,000 hours. Ultimately, I know that they say if it's 10,000 hours or more, you're an expert. So I've definitely spent my fair share learning and still unlearning and relearning more information as it relates to dyslexia. So when I found my first speaking role, or when the first speaking role found me, I was approached about talking to an audience with regard to how their dyslexia could affect the way that they experience and they are interact with the internet. And I was like, oh, that's different. So, I went to the drawing board and eventually presented and facilitated on that topic, and it was a hit. I saw a lot of people waiting afterwards to talk to me about their experiences, to tell me about, their siblings or relatives. I was like, wow, this really hit home for a lot of people. So as I started pitching my talk to other technical conferences and tech employers, I was getting a lot of hits. A lot of people were like, hey, we want you to come out and talk about this because we don't hear it talked about enough. So ultimately, that helped lead me into writing my book, which is Technical Difficulties, Why Dyslexic Narratives Matter in Tech, because I saw a need for this publication. I saw that this literature would be important and it would be needed in several different spaces. So that's how I started developing the content for that book. I put it out in 2019. It is a book that is large enough to finish on maybe a 3-hour flight. So it's not an extremely long book. It does have infographics in there.
I love that.
I consider it an inspiratory guide. And why I say that is because it provides a lot of inspiration for those who are dyslexic and they want to pursue careers in the technology field. And for people who love those who are on that dyslexia continuum and they want to help them to see their worth and see that, hey, you can find gainful employment in tech just by being who you are and tapping into some of those innate characteristics that you have.
Yeah.
So that's essentially my journey to writing the book. And I will also say, to piggyback on that last question you asked about social justice, and it's kind of just part of the territory. Once you start advocating for a marginalized group, I mean, it kind of comes with that territory. So now we're looking at providing justice for that group of people and what that looks like and how that can come into fruition. So I think it starts off where you're just like, hey, I think these people need better, accommodations, or I think that they need better avenues to success. And then you go down a rabbit hole and somehow you are on that social justice kick. So yeah, that's definitely how that kind of evolved over time.
That's really great. And I love that. I'll read one of the little part of your book here where you mention about what you should expect in this book. It's at the beginning, and you say, stories offer hope and fuel narratives. Naturally, these narratives extend a marked resilience and echo influence. Storytelling has had a way of connecting us for nearly 30,000 years. Underscoring that point, I hope that this guide will encourage more dyslexic individuals to bring their in-demand and innate abilities to the tech industry.
Yes.
And
yes.
I love that you go off of the idea of telling their story, right? Because each have a story. And I think here your focus of these individuals telling their story is really almost like it feels personal, right? It feels like this call to action, but it's like a personal call. And I really love that. And then I don't know if you all can see this, but I love on the next page, you have one of your infographics.
Oh yeah.
I love that.
And that is definitely one of my favorite. I considered posting it online and I was like, nah, you got to get the book to get that one.
Like, get the book if you want. I have it on my Kindle on my phone right now, but yeah, no, I mean, and speaking of which, do go follow her Instagram because she has amazing illustrations, very informative illustrations, infographics, basically, that are definitely worth the read and follow. But yeah, no, I love that. Is there anything else you want to add on about your book? I do have one other question that popped into my mind as you were talking, but if there was anything else you wanted to add on before I ask you that.
Nope, I would just simply say it's a short read. It's an inspirational read. And it does start each chapter with a story. And the story kind of helps shape what you'll be learning about. I talk about tokenism, diversity and inclusion, accommodations, diagnosis. So it's a lot that is covered within that short span. It's a really great read overall, if I say so myself.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And this is more of like maybe I wouldn't say personal question, but somewhat personal, more about you, I guess, in relation to that. So I was thinking about how, you wrote this amazing book. You have all of this, I would say, expertise in this topic, right? And you also said, I don't have dyslexia. And so I guess my question is, how was there a point, or are there points in this process for you where you question yourself and where you think, am I the right person for this? Am I good enough for this? It's just a wondering, honestly, that came to my mind, because I think personally, like many of us struggle with that feeling of, I don't know if I should be the one putting this out there, right? Or how do I know I'm the one, right? Or one of the people that can advocate for this. So I just kind of want to know your take on that and where you stand, how you feel about that.
Okay. So all of your questions have been phenomenal. I think this one is certainly a fantastic question because I've never thought of it and I've never been asked it. So I will say that I am a big believer of the fact that if something is on your heart, that something is, being on your mind, then you need to act on it. Otherwise, you will regret not acting on it. So I've been working in this space since I graduated in 2011 with my undergrad degree.
Yeah.
So I've been working in this space since probably 2011. So for about 10 years now, since we're in 2021. So I've never got to a point where I was like, should I be talking about this? Because in my book, I'm just highlighting stories and just presenting data. And so, no, I've never thought about that or hadn't had a moment where I was like, I probably shouldn't be doing this. But I will say that I love seeing new people in the field that are really interested and intrigued by dyslexia, because for me, it's like almost sharing is caring. So as I'm seeing new professionals that are learning more about dyslexia, or parents who have children who are dyslexic and they're like, I want to invest time in learning more, it's really invigorating for me. And I'm so excited because all in all, I just want people to understand what dyslexia is, understand maybe some indicators, and be well informed as they make decisions. So that's it.
Good. And I think, I mean, there's no questions asked that you're an expert in this, you know, that's absolutely pretty obvious to me. I think I just was wondering, because I think there's sometimes that little, whether it's because of society or because of our own experiences or because of our identities, there's always that, there can come that doubt of, should I step forward with this?
Yes.
Should I put myself out there like this? Should I put these stories out there like this? Why should I, right? And I think, you know, I think it's just really wonderful that you are doing it. And I think it speaks volumes to how you want to use your space and your abilities to really, you know, put other stories out there, and particularly stories of individuals with that struggle with dyslexia or that have other disabilities. It's like, I learned so much from you because of the fact that you're putting your some of your infographics on Instagram, right? Because I feel like the education is definitely a place to start for a lot of people, like you're saying, you know. So I'm really grateful for that, for your work that you're doing.
Thank you very much. And I will say that I've seen a lot of people to make statements saying that, you know, your proximity to someone with, you know, dyslexia or autism or ADHD doesn't make you an expert. And I get that. So that's why I focus on highlighting those stories and amplifying those experiences. And then I provide evidence-based research. Like, so if you are struggling with this, like said person, this is helpful. So yeah, I think it's just important to follow your heart. And if your heart and your mind are telling you like, hey, this would be a really good idea to put this out there, then do it. I just know that there are activists out there. There are activists out there that want their specific stories to be highlighted. And they're like, if you aren't this way, then you can't speak on that. And I totally understand their point of view. That's why, you know, when I am working within this field and speaking on dyslexia, I make it a point to bring those voices to the table. And I'm not just talking about me, I. So
yes, I love
I think that is, you know, that's kind of that prerequisite there.
That's a very good point. Very good point. And I agree. That's really good. Thank you. Thank you for answering that question. I was like, I don't know if I should ask because it came to
no, it was a good question. It was a good question.
Yeah.
Because I tell you, this is Autism Acceptance Month, and I have been seeing a lot of people, you know, putting the hammer down on individuals who are advocating for autism who are not autistic. And so it just helps me to see this question from a different light now. So yeah, I think it was a great question. Fantastic.
That's a good point. Love that. Thank you. And then I'm so grateful that you're here on this. And really just one last question that I have for you. And I think it maybe is a summary really of what you've already said, but I'll still ask it anyway. I guess, what's the core inspiration that keeps you going in this work?
what keeps me going, what keeps me grounded is just knowing that when I put out work around dyslexia, around technology, assistive technology that can be used, around ways to create a more accessible experience online for those with dyslexia, is just the fact that there are always people thanking me for the work that I'm doing. I think having those people, having those light bulb moments, they're like, I didn't even know that. Yeah. And for those with dyslexia who are approaching me and saying, I really appreciate what you put out there, or here's another tool I'd love for you to add to your toolbox, and to consider, amplifying this. As long as I continue to get that feedback, I'm going to keep working towards making this a more accessible and a more just place for those with dyslexia.
That's great. Then, did you want to maybe pass along any other places people can find you, where they can find this recording if they want to watch it again, share it?
Yes. So I will be posting this to my YouTube channel, and you can typically find me by looking for any platform looking for Barely Articulating out there. I'm on Tumblr, I'm on Pinterest, I'm on YouTube, I'm on TikTok now.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I am. I was on Snapchat, but I don't use that at all. Twitter, Facebook, the whole works. So yeah, you can follow my work. I put out wonderful infographics for you to understand different components of dyslexia, technology, and so forth. And I'm also doing a Medium series, an exclusive series on Medium about dyslexia is the new Black. So I'm featuring Black women who have dyslexia, and I'm asking them questions and really narrating the experience. So I think that would be a great experience to check out.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, go get connected with Barely Articulating. Thank you so much for joining me today on my little charla, Café con peromiss.
Yes, and I have my water. You have your cafe, I have my water, agua.
Oh, there you go.